Hello lovely people, I'm Shaq and welcome. Today we're going to do a little tutorial on how to make the tropical shirt for Ken. The same instructions will be able to be used for the Pukifee version, and those patterns will be available in my shop hopefully when this video comes out. Fingers crossed. If it's not there, if I should fail in my assignment to get that pattern in the shop before this video airs, then know that it'll be there very soon after. So let's get started. Here are the tropical shirts. This is a Click and Play doll wearing this one, and this is a Buff Ken. And the Pukifee one right here, they are all going to be made the same way, but I will give you some hints on shortcuts you can take that won't be included in the instructions in the actual PDF. I will only have those hints here in this video. So let's get started. First, you're going to need to cut out the pieces. Make sure that you've got mirror image on the fronts, and 2 sleeves, 2 yokes, and 2 pieces for the collar. Transfer the marks for the pleats, but I'm just going to say that the most important thing here is that when you fold in for your pleats, that you're going to just match it to the width of this bottom of the yoke here. And that is actually more important than the marks. The marks are guidelines to give you a place to start, but you will need to just match it to that width, which we'll do later. We're going to start by taking the 2 collar pieces. The round edge is the part that attaches to the shirt. There will be 2 marks on the pattern to indicate cut lines or where it lines up with the shoulder seams, but don't cut them at this time. Again, this is more important about making it line up with where it lands on the shirt, to cut it precisely at that point. So you're going to stitch around this edge and trim, and I hope it's not too confusing because we're going to switch sizes now. So this is the smaller size collar. It has been stitched. I have trimmed the corners, and then you're going to take it and flip it right side out. Use a tool, something like this, or a knitting needle works too. Something that's blunt, but to get those corners out. Sharp and blunt at the same time. Too sharp and it goes through. Too blunt and it won't get in the corner. And then you're going to set that collar aside. Now we're going to switch back to a full size. So now we're going to take that back, and we're going to kind of put in a guesstimated, using the marks, dart, but not worry about too much because we may have to shift it to have it match the yoke. I'm trying to remember which one of these went on the outside. Anyway, one of the yokes will be on the inside, so you're going to want to have the right side of the yoke to the inside or wrong side of the back, and go ahead and make sure that you're pinned and matching up. Should have had these in reach. And I will go ahead and pin one of them and then see where the other one lands. And try to, it's not strictly necessary that you match this up perfectly. To the edge is important, but not the size. What I meant is the size of your pleat. Like you've pinned that one in and you discover that this one is going to be tiny. You can take this one out and make them even, or you can get close. That's pretty close. And then I'm going to take the right side here and put it to the right side, and we're going to sandwich the back between. Not quite sure how that worked out. and then stitch along this this edge right there, sandwiching the back between the two yolks. Now, one of the shortcuts is to not use both yolks. It's not strictly necessary. I like the way it ends up, but if you don't use that, you will have raw edges on the inside of your shirt showing. So if you've put the two yolks on either side of the back, you're going to have a nice, neat, covered seam right here. And then you're going to take the fronts. Another trick here with the fronts, I ran into a problem with one of the fabrics because I was using scraps that I didn't have enough. And so I cut on the fold line and used this added seam allowance to both pieces, and then was able to cut this lining separate from the front. And if you're using if you want to do a contrasting lining, that's another way to do it as well. On most of these shirts, it's just a fold there, and the lining is part of the front, but you can make it two separate pieces if you'd like to. So now you're going to have the right side facing you, and the right side of the front, and line them up at the shoulders, making sure you've got the left on the left and the right on the right. And then you're going to stitch the shoulder seams on both pieces, so both of them will be stitched on. Once you have your shoulder seams sewn, you want to take that yoke and you are going to fold under the top edge of the lining yoke and hand stitch it to over the seam allowance of the front. So here at the shoulder seams, at the shoulders, you're going to cover that seam by hand stitching this in place. Once you've hand stitched this seam, then you're going to want to put the sleeves in. And I would like to add here that I have been hand stitching all of this, but the Kin shirt has a 1/4 inch seam allowance, which would allow you to sew it on your sewing machine. I would still do things like set in the sleeves by hand because that's where I feel comfortable, but you do you. If you feel comfortable putting these sleeves in on the machine, or all of it on the machine, please do. It definitely makes the project go a lot faster. You'll also want to put a gathering stitch along this edge to help pull it up to get the ease in, and that is actually one of those things that I think the machine does better than hand stitching in a gathering stitch. And because I'm going to do it by hand, I won't have that eased in stitch there. I also wanted to say that on the Pookie Fee, it has a much smaller seam allowance, so if you want to sew it on your machine, you'll need to add seam allowance. One of the little tricks that I do for doing it by hand is to attach the outside edges and then just work in the fullness over the top. And the advantage for me, I think, is that you can see as you're going how well it's working. As you stitch, you flip it back and forth and make sure that you haven't got any puckers going on. So stitch both your sleeves in. Once you've got your sleeves stitched in, you'll want to trim or clip. I like to use a pinking shear or scallop shear to do that part because it kind of is both in one. You're getting a little bit of snipping and trimming of the seam to make it lay better. Then you're going to fold your seam allowance. I didn't put a really deep hem on this, and so you might want to do some fray check along that edge, or any place else on the garments where your seams are left showing. You might want to put some kind of fray stop on those edges. But you can, with the 1/4 inch, you could double fold that if you wanted to get rid of that raw edge. So go ahead and hem up your sleeves. Okay, so now you're going to pick back up that collar you set aside, and decide which side of it you want up and showing. So that side will go against the back of the yoke. Now you should mark where those lines on your pattern piece are with either a pin or an erasable marker, sewing pencil or something. Those marks line up approximately with these shoulder seams. So it may not be exact, but you're going to kind of straighten out your collar edge here and put the curved edge to it and center it between those marks. And pin it in place. We've already done that over here. So I've got it pinned from the folded edge, and this is somewhat easier if the folded edge has been creased to maintain that line without having to guess where it's at or marking it in some way. So you want to leave between those marks on the collar, you want to leave this edge free. If you're following the method that I have in the pattern. Now, if you want to simplify this and you don't mind having that raw edge right at the edge of the collar on the inside of the shirt, then you wouldn't leave this free. You would go ahead and have it attached along here. But I'm going to actually baste this in place before I do the next step. So once I've got this collar basted in place and I've got this edge free, just between the shoulders, the finished shoulder seam, I'm going to call this the shoulder seam right here, where the yoke is basted, or not basted, stitched down. So you've got your fold line for the front edge. You're going to fold the opposite direction, and you're going to note that the collar here does not go all the way into that fold. So you've got the fold here, that shows it. The fold here and the collar ends there. So there should be like 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to fold backwards on that fold line. And in case this edge of the collar, and I'm having a difficult time getting this to lay. So one of the things that happens when you're putting your collar in is you stretch this rounded edge. And so you're going to need to stretch this side to match the same amount of stretch, I guess. The edge here should probably be folded back and pressed so that you don't stitch it down in the wrong direction. And it should, that fold should land just about where your collar opening in is, where your mark and whatnot on the collar ends. So you're going to place that there. So that you can stitch along here up to this spot. I like to just leave the flap free and end right at that seam. I mean at that fold. So I'd stitch properly right up to it, and then making sure that I have pulled away this, I would stitch through here and then repeat on the other side the same thing. So here we have it all stitched, and the stitching on the sides ended right there to let that flap, the fold, not be attached. So everything is landing in the right spot. Now you're going to trim the corner here so that it'll turn nicely. And I'm not going to do trimming through here, but I am going to do some clipping through the rounded area. and then turn. And again, use that tool to get that nice and turned. And you should have the edge of the collar covered. There. You have to do the same thing over here. And then you are going to take your scissors and you are going to very, very carefully clip through this fabric right next to where this yoke was stitched down, right up to the seam, but not through the seam, on both sides. So that the edge, that it's all able to move free from the stuff that, from the fabric that is on this side. This area needs to be able to move in a different direction. So I'm going to snip this side too, making sure that I'm not snipping the overlap there. Okay. Then take that section and tuck it up into the collar and tuck the edge of the collar under. Then you can hand stitch down this edge of the collar, which encases all of your raw edges in the middle up into the collar. And you have covered the other raw edges of the collar with your lining. And now you are going to tuck that down and make sure that everything's pulled smooth, and you can stitch that down across here. I like to tuck under this edge. You can just do the fray check on it, or you can tuck it under and stitch it, or you can serge it. However you want to finish this edge, you can do that. I am also one who likes to sew it down, which is, you know, just an extra step that isn't strictly necessary. But that would be the next thing, is to get all that hand stitching done. You also are going to want to fold backwards on the bottom here of this and stitch. Let's go ahead and fold in the finished edge that I wanted to do there. You're going to stitch along here at what would be the fold line of your hem. So that 1/4 inch or so of hem that you've got, that's where you want that seam line to go at the bottom of this lining and front edge. If you chose not to do the method where you clip and tuck the raw edge into the collar, you'll just fold the whole thing down, and you can top stitch it if you, you can top stitch it if you'd like to keep it in a folded down position, but it will just be a raw edge here in the center, and the outside or the front edge lining will come up over the top of it up to the shoulder seam. Once you've got this little seam here, you're going to clip that corner and turn it with the whole front edge here to the outside. There we go, poke those out. And we have a nice finished bottom edge and top edge. And my pin, I took it out so I wouldn't get caught on it. So I still have to do the hand stitching there. But before I do that, I think what I want to do here is finish this. So we're going to do the side seam. And you just line up your finished edge of your sleeves, nice and neat. Try and get your seam lined up. And then down to the edge. I worry less about this edge because if it's a little bit uneven, you're gonna kind of fold it up and deal. It won't be an issue at that way. So stitch your underarm seam on both sides. Once your side seam is sewn, you will want to clip right up there into the armpit, just one tiny little clip, so that it doesn't pull later. Then you're gonna iron up that hem, and I like to flatten out the seams. You could have trimmed them or however you wanted to finish those, but then you press this up and stitch it in place. As you can see, I did get that finished. Then turn everybody right side out once that's finished. You might want to give it another press at this point. I like to press the collar and the top part here into place. And then you're going to add either buttons and buttonholes or a couple snaps with decorative buttons, your choice. I like to do the snaps with little buttons over the top. I have used 4mm buttons on here, and so there were 4 of them on the larger size shirt, and on the Pookie Fee shirt we only have 3. But each shirt has 2 snaps on either size, and that is completely up to you. And I wasn't consistent about which side went over the top. This one was decided by I wanted more of the pony to show, so we put that side over the top. If you're concerned, this is the masculine way of overlapping. Here's the shirt on a regular kin. And remember to have fun with your print. This little shirt, we managed to get a pony's face on the back. And of course all the stars and lightning, and we even have a little peekaboo right there. This one has a full pony on the back. And this is, what I would consider a larger print. We managed to get most pony on each sleeve and on the front. And the flowers on this one are definitely larger. That's like a full, and it had great big leaves out to the side, but it looks great. And just tried to get some color in on the different pieces and having fun with it. So I hope you have a delightful day and a wonderful week, and please check out the patterns, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.